You wake up already racing against time. Emails unanswered, meetings ahead, children to take care of, demands that never pause. In the middle of this storm, where is the space for your emotions, for your fears, your anger, your exhaustion? Modern life leaves women with little room to breathe, yet it demands poise and perfection. The paradox is cruel. Society expects you to be flawless and composed, even as the pressure grows unbearable. What if there was a figure who symbolizes the power to resist this chaos? Medusa, often misunderstood as a monster, was, in truth, a woman who embodied unshakable presence. Her gaze froze those who dared to cross her boundaries. For us, she becomes a metaphor, the ability to command respect, to set limits, to protect our inner world from being consumed by the noise outside. Today's woman does not need mythical weapons. She needs clarity of mind, control over her emotions, and the courage to say no without guilt. She needs to master herself in order not to be mastered by pressure. Practical emotional mastery is not about suppressing what you feel, but about using your emotions as energy-directed, disciplined, and empowering. Imagine transforming moments of anxiety into focus, turning the sting of criticism into resilience, shaping solitude into strength rather than loneliness. These are not abstract ideals, but real, trainable skills grounded in psychology and Stoic philosophy. Medusa's lesson is not silence through fear, but silence through power, the ability to remain still while the world spins. This is your invitation, to stop being devoured by pressure and to start using it as fuel. To embody Medusa not as a monster, but as a symbol of radical authenticity, emotional discipline, and resilience. Because in a world that constantly demands more, your greatest act of rebellion is self-mastery. Welcome to a space created for women who carry the weight of endless responsibilities, yet still long for balance, clarity, and strength. If you are here, it is because you already know how exhausting it feels to be constantly under pressure, racing against deadlines, meeting expectations, managing relationships, and trying to maintain a sense of self in the midst of it all. You are not alone in this struggle, and more importantly, you are not powerless. The symbol of Medusa, often seen as a monster, will be our guide. She is not a myth to be feared, but an archetype to be reimagined, a representation of a woman who cannot be ignored, whose presence sets boundaries without apology, and whose gaze commands respect. In the language of psychology, she becomes a mirror for emotional mastery, the art of responding with strength instead of reacting in chaos. In the language of Stoic philosophy, she embodies the principle that while we cannot control the world, we can always control how we meet it. Through this journey, you will not find abstract theories or complicated rituals. You will find practical exercises designed for women with little time but a deep need for transformation. These are tools you can practice in 5 minutes a day, techniques rooted in modern psychology and timeless philosophy, adapted for the pace of your reality. Together, we will transform pressure into clarity, criticism into resilience, and solitude into self-respect. If this message speaks to you, I invite you to take part actively. Subscribe, like, and share this content so more women can step into their Medusa-like strength. And leave a comment below. Tell us from which city and country you are watching. Let this be the beginning of a community of women reclaiming power through self-mastery. Pressure has a way of distorting reality. When you are in the middle of deadlines, responsibilities, and social expectations, your perception narrows. You no longer see the bigger picture. You see only the weight pressing on your chest. This narrowing is not weakness, it is biology. The human brain, under stress, becomes reactive. For women who balance professional ambition with personal care and societal judgment, this reactivity can feel like constant suffocation. Psychology calls it cognitive overload, but for you, it feels like losing control. The first step toward emotional mastery is to understand that stress does not make you broken. It makes you human. Yet, being human does not mean being helpless. The Stoics faced pressure of a different kind: wars, exile, loss of family, and political persecution. Epictetus, born a slave, taught that freedom begins not with external conditions but with internal discipline. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. For the modern woman, this is not philosophy for libraries, it is a survival code. The external world will always bring turbulence. Mastery begins when you stop fighting against the storm and instead redirect your gaze inward. This is where Medusa becomes more than myth. Her power was not in attacking, but in holding presence so strong that it stopped aggressors in their tracks. To be like Medusa in today's world is to learn the art of the pause. Neuroscience shows that between an emotional trigger and your reaction, there is a small gap. That gap is power. When someone criticizes you, when a task overwhelms you, when anxiety rises, the pause is your shield. Instead of responding with automatic defensiveness or collapse, you breathe. You allow the emotion to appear without letting it dictate your next move. Medusa's gaze is a metaphor for this inner stillness, unshaken, unhurried, unbent. Yet emotional mastery is not about freezing feelings. It is about recognizing them and redirecting them. Imagine anger as fire. Uncontrolled, it burns you and those around you. Controlled, it becomes heat for creation, warmth, or light. The same is true of anxiety, sadness, even fear. Women are often taught to either suppress these emotions or drown in them. Both approaches lead to exhaustion. Mastery means transforming raw emotion into disciplined energy. Medusa teaches this through her radical boundaries. She did not invite intrusion, and when faced with violation, she did not collapse into submission. Her myth, stripped of patriarchal interpretation, is one of resistance through presence. Consider a practical exercise, the 2-minute reset. The next time you feel overwhelmed, step aside into a bathroom, a quiet corner, or even just close your eyes where you are. Name the emotion you feel: anger, fear, shame, anxiety. Then breathe deeply, counting to 4 as you inhale, 4 as you hold, 4 as you exhale, and 4 as you rest. This technique, rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy, restores control to your nervous system. It does not erase the stress, but it prevents you from being consumed by it. In that moment, you are embodying Medusa's pause, her silent command. But what about time? Busy women often believe they cannot afford emotional rituals. Here lies the paradox. The busier you are, the more you need mastery. Without it, time slips into chaos. With it, even short moments become powerful. Think of the pause not as an extra task but as armor. Just as you would not step into battle unprotected, you should not step into your day without at least one moment of centering. A minute of mastery saves an hour of regret. Medusa's myth reminds us that stillness is not luxury, it is survival. Boundaries form the second pillar of emotional mastery. Women are often praised for flexibility, kindness, and availability, but punished when they assert limits. This double standard is poison. Medusa teaches the opposite. To set boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. In psychological terms, boundaries are the external expression of internal control. Without them, resentment grows, exhaustion deepens, and identity dissolves. With them, relationships become clearer and respect emerges naturally. A simple practice. Before saying yes, pause and ask, what am I sacrificing by agreeing to this? If the cost is your peace, your time, or your energy, then the answer may need to be no. In the Stoic tradition, mastery is not about rejecting the world but interacting with it on your terms. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. To live like Medusa is to embody this truth. External chaos will always knock at your door, but you decide how much enters. Emotional mastery for busy women is not an abstract goal. It is a daily practice of guarding your mental space with the same determination that Medusa guarded her sacred temple. Another exercise, the boundary journal. Each night, write down one situation where you felt your limits were crossed and how you responded. Then imagine how Medusa would have responded not with violence, but with a gaze that tolerated no disrespect. This visualization builds psychological rehearsal. Over time, it reprograms your responses, making assertiveness natural rather than forced. Emotional mastery grows not in grand gestures, but in daily acts of clarity. Finally, solitude. Many women fear it, associating it with abandonment or failure. But solitude, when chosen, is strength. Medusa lived apart, not because she was unworthy, but because she refused to bend to those who sought to diminish her. Solitude is the ground of authenticity, the place where you can strip away roles, expectations, and noise and return to yourself. Psychological studies confirm that moments of solitude enhance self-regulation, creativity, and emotional balance. Even 5 minutes a day can anchor you in a world that demands constant performance. To sit alone, without reaching for a phone or task, is to declare, "I am enough in this moment." To master emotions as a busy woman is not to become cold or detached. It is to become deliberate. Medusa, the archetype, does not teach suppression but sovereignty. Through pauses, boundaries, and chosen solitude, you transform pressure into presence. You become untouchable not because you escape life, but because you face it with radical clarity. In a society that thrives on your exhaustion, this clarity is rebellion. And rebellion, in its quietest form, is freedom. Emotions often arrive like uninvited guests. A critical email, a passing comment, a disappointed glance, suddenly your body tenses, your heart races, and your thoughts spiral. This is not weakness. It is the design of the human nervous system. Women, conditioned by centuries of expectation, often carry the double weight of their own emotions and the emotions of others. You are expected to be calm but also empathetic, assertive but also soft, productive but also endlessly available. These contradictions create inner tension that can easily explode in anxiety, guilt, or silent resentment. Emotional mastery is not about becoming numb to these reactions, but about refusing to let them hijack your life. In Stoic thought, emotions are not enemies but signals. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant is that the mind, when left untrained, exaggerates threats and replays wounds endlessly. This is where Medusa's symbolism becomes powerful. Her gaze does not deny the existence of threats, but transforms them. Those who approach with harm are stopped, not through attack, but through presence. To adopt Medusa's way is to train your perception so that emotions do not enslave you but alert you. Anxiety becomes a signal that you need preparation. Anger becomes a signal that your boundaries are being crossed. Sadness becomes a signal that something you value is missing. To listen without being ruled, that is mastery. Consider a practice called label and reframe. When you feel a surge of emotion, name it aloud or silently. This is anger. This is fear. Neuroscience shows that labeling emotions activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, and reduces amygdala overreaction. Once named, reframe it. This anger is telling me I need respect. This fear is telling me I need safety. In doing so, you transform raw emotion into information. Medusa's myth mirrors this. She turns what could overwhelm into something manageable, freezing the chaos so that it can no longer harm. For busy women, reframing is revolutionary because time does not allow lengthy reflection in the middle of chaos. By practicing this habit in small, daily doses, you prepare yourself for larger storms. Think of it as training a muscle. At first, you may forget, react automatically, or feel awkward. But repetition strengthens neural pathways. Soon, labeling and reframing become instinct, just as natural as breathing. You will notice a shift, less reactivity, more clarity, and the growing ability to stay calm while others lose control. This is not suppression. It is self-command. Boundaries extend beyond words, they exist also in perception. One of the greatest drains on women's emotional strength is the attempt to control how others perceive them. You dress, speak, or act in ways designed to avoid judgment, yet judgment always comes. Medusa's lesson is radical. Her image was demonized by those who feared her power. She did not waste time correcting the story told about her. She remained herself, regardless of how others chose to define her. To master emotions, you must learn to let go of controlling others' opinions. Your energy belongs to action, not to endless self-defense. A practical exercise for this is the circle of control. Take a sheet of paper and draw 2 circles, one inside the other. In the smaller circle, write what you can control: your words, your choices, your daily practices. In the outer circle, write what you cannot control: others' opinions, unpredictable events, the future. Each time you feel overwhelmed by someone's criticism or pressure, return to this image. Ask, am I focusing on the inner circle or the outer? This practice, drawn directly from Stoicism, frees you from wasting energy on what was never yours to command. Medusa's power is mirrored here. She stands unshaken because she does not bend to forces outside her control. Another essential element is the redefinition of solitude. In Chapter 1, we touched on chosen solitude as strength. Here, we expand. Solitude is the laboratory of emotional mastery. Without moments alone, reflection cannot take root. Women often fear solitude because society labels it as failure or isolation. But solitude, when embraced, is where you can process emotions without external noise. It is where labeling and reframing become habits, where boundaries are clarified, where you reclaim your narrative. Medusa's solitude was painted as exile, but in truth, it was sovereignty. She owned her space fully, even when the world refused to understand. From a psychological standpoint, solitude strengthens self-regulation. Research shows that individuals who spend intentional time alone develop higher resilience, creativity, and self-awareness. For busy women, solitude may not mean hours of retreat but minutes of intentional withdrawal. 5 minutes in the morning before screens or a quiet walk without a phone can become rituals of recalibration. These moments, though small, are seeds of mastery. You are training yourself to live not in constant reaction, but in deliberate response. Criticism is another arena where emotions often spiral. A careless remark from a colleague, a sharp tone from a partner, or a comment about appearance can ignite shame or defensiveness. But criticism, when reframed, can become a test of mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Medusa embodies this truth. Criticism cannot penetrate unless you open the door. Instead of reacting, pause and ask, is this criticism a mirror or a projection? If it reflects truth, learn from it. If it is projection, let it fall away. Either way, you remain sovereign. The last practice of this chapter is what I call the Medusa breath. It is a simple tool to reset when criticism or pressure strikes unexpectedly. Inhale deeply for 4 counts, imagining yourself gathering strength into your core. Hold for 4 counts, visualizing the stillness of Medusa's gaze. Exhale slowly for 6 counts, releasing the weight of others' expectations. This technique regulates the nervous system, slows the heart rate, and restores clarity. Over time, it becomes a ritual of resistance, an embodied reminder that you cannot control what others throw at you, but you can always control how you stand in the storm. Emotional mastery for busy women is not about perfection. It is about building habits that transform pressure into resilience. Through labeling and reframing, through circles of control, through solitude and breath, you train yourself to face the world as Medusa did, unapologetic, unbending, and deeply present. You are no longer a prisoner of reaction. You are a commander of response. And in this mastery, you find freedom not from emotion, but through it. Emotions in a busy life often come as waves, and many women feel like they are constantly swimming against the tide. Anxiety from deadlines, guilt from unmet expectations, and irritation from social demands create a turbulent inner ocean. Without tools to navigate these waters, even small events can feel catastrophic. Emotional mastery begins by acknowledging that chaos exists, but also by realizing that you are not powerless within it. Medusa, as an archetype, symbolizes the ability to remain composed while external forces attempt to overwhelm. She is not passive. She embodies stillness with authority, a model for women who need to reclaim their inner calm amidst relentless pressure. The first principle in cultivating this mastery is awareness. Mindfulness is not merely a trendy concept. It is a scientifically validated method for regulating emotions. When you notice your body tensing, your breath shortening, or your thoughts spiraling, pause. Observe without judgment. What are you feeling, and why? Awareness transforms automatic reactions into conscious responses. Medusa's gaze is an analogy here. She does not flee from threats but acknowledges them fully, freezing them in their place without letting them dictate her next move. In daily life, awareness allows you to confront emotions without surrendering to them. Next comes prioritization. Women often experience emotional overload because they attempt to manage every detail simultaneously. The Stoics advised focusing only on what is essential, and this principle translates perfectly to modern life. Create a mental triage. Distinguish what demands your immediate attention, what can wait, and what is beyond your control. When emotions surge, ask, which of these feelings requires action and which are distractions? This exercise helps you regain agency. Medusa teaches that clarity and focus prevents energy from being wasted on inconsequential matters, allowing emotional strength to remain intact. Reframing remains crucial. Each stressful interaction carries the risk of spiraling into self-doubt or resentment. Cognitive behavioral psychology shows that how we interpret events shapes our emotional response more than the events themselves. Imagine criticism from a colleague. Without reframing, it triggers anger or insecurity. With reframing, you can ask, does this reflect my truth or someone else's bias? Medusa's myth reinforces this lesson. The gaze transforms perception, stopping danger in its tracks. Similarly, your reframing stops emotional hijacking before it spirals into chaos. Practical exercises for busy women must be short and effective. The 5-minute emotional reset is one such tool. Sit in a quiet space, close your eyes, and identify one dominant emotion. Visualize it as a cloud, acknowledge its presence, and then let it float away while inhaling deeply for 4 counts and exhaling for 6. Repeat for 5 cycles. This brief, deliberate pause can prevent emotional escalation, allowing you to return to tasks with renewed clarity. Medusa's presence teaches us that power resides in measured, intentional action rather than reactionary force. Another essential skill is boundary reinforcement. Emotional mastery is inseparable from the ability to say no without guilt. Boundaries are the armor that protects your energy. They are not acts of cruelty, but declarations of self-respect. In practice, identify one area where your boundaries are weak over commitments, unsolicited advice, or social obligations. Apply the rule: pause, evaluate, respond deliberately. This practice strengthens neural pathways that reinforce autonomy. Like Medusa, the woman who sets clear boundaries communicates power without aggression. Emotional mastery also requires acceptance of imperfection. Women often internalize societal pressures to be flawlessly balanced, endlessly patient, and completely nurturing. Stoicism reminds us that perfection is an illusion. Resilience is built on adaptation. When mistakes happen or expectations are unmet, acknowledge them without self-flagellation. Medusa's archetype reminds us that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the presence of sovereignty in the face of imperfection. Each lapse becomes an opportunity for growth, not self-punishment. Integration of breathwork with mental reframing is particularly effective under time pressure. For example, during a brief commute or waiting period, practice the focused inhale-exhale while mentally labeling one emotion: stress, irritation, or fatigue. This pairing activates both rational and autonomic systems, stabilizing mood and enhancing focus. Medusa's gaze, calm and uncheckable, symbolizes this union: body and mind aligned, unyielding to external disturbances. Even short, repeated practice accumulates, creating a foundation for resilience. Reflection at the end of the day is another cornerstone. Allocate 5 minutes to journal emotional triggers and your responses. Which moments escalated? Which moments remained calm? Identify patterns and reinforce successes. Over time, you internalize strategies that promote composure and reduce reactive behavior. Medusa's myth reinforces that mastery is gradual. It is cultivated in small, deliberate acts that accumulate into formidable presence. Finally, emotional mastery is inseparable from self-compassion. Busy women often act as both warriors and caretakers, forgetting that they themselves deserve care. Treat yourself as you would advise a friend, with clarity, firmness, and empathy. Recognize effort even when outcomes fall short. Medusa's archetype is a mirror for radical self-respect. By embracing awareness, prioritization, reframing, boundary setting, and self-compassion, you cultivate an unshakable inner presence. You are not merely surviving the pressures of a busy life. You are transforming them into your own domain of power. Distraction is one of the greatest thieves of emotional mastery for busy women. The modern world offers a constant stream of notifications, tasks, and competing demands. Each interruption fragments attention, undermines focus, and escalates stress. The human brain is not designed for perpetual multitasking, yet women are often expected to manage careers, households, social obligations, and emotional labor simultaneously. Medusa's archetype provides a blueprint for reclaiming presence. She stands unmoved amid chaos, commanding respect through her unyielding gaze. To emulate her, emotional mastery must begin with focused attention. The practice of single-tasking is deceptively simple but profoundly effective. Rather than juggling multiple responsibilities at once, commit to one task for a defined period. During this time, allow your attention to rest fully on the activity, letting go of other worries. This practice strengthens self-regulation and diminishes the impulsive emotional responses triggered by scattered focus. Like Medusa, who embodies stillness that commands authority, focused attention communicates internal stability and power. Another critical dimension is emotional anticipation. Anticipatory anxiety can cripple decision-making and amplify stress. Stoicism teaches that while we cannot control external events, we can prepare our minds to respond calmly. Medusa's myth exemplifies this. Her presence anticipates threats without overreacting. In practice, anticipate potential stressors in your day, challenging conversations, tight deadlines, or conflicts. Mentally rehearse your responses using labeling and reframing techniques. This mental preparation reduces impulsive reactions and cultivates a poised, deliberate demeanor. Women often face the invisible pressure of perfectionism. The expectation to excel in every domain fuels emotional turbulence. Emotional mastery requires redefining success not by external validation, but by alignment with values and priorities. Medusa's lesson is radical authenticity. She does not conform to others' ideals, she embodies her truth. Daily practice includes affirming personal standards and intentionally letting go of societal judgments. The more consistently you align with your internal compass, the more resilient your emotional state becomes. Time management and emotional mastery are intertwined. Overcommitment is a major source of stress, leaving little room for reflective practice. Women who juggle multiple roles must learn the art of deliberate allocation. Begin by evaluating which responsibilities align with your goals and values and which drain your energy unnecessarily. Implementing concise boundaries around time, such as scheduled breaks for reflection or meditation, reinforces internal control. Medusa's gaze, unmoved by intrusion, serves as a metaphor. Deliberate control over your time cultivates resilience. A key exercise is the priority triad. Each morning, identify 3 critical actions that will define the day's success. Attend to them with focused attention and discipline. Remaining tasks are delegated, deferred, or eliminated. This method reduces emotional overwhelm and instills a sense of mastery over the day's events. Medusa's presence teaches that clarity in purpose translates into clarity in response. Emotional energy is finite. Directing it intentionally magnifies impact. Social interactions are another arena for emotional regulation. Women often carry the weight of others' emotions, absorbing anxiety, frustration, or judgment. Emotional mastery involves recognizing emotional contagion and maintaining psychological boundaries. Visualize your internal space as Medusa's domain. Intrusions are allowed only when aligned with your values. This practice prevents exhaustion from unfiltered emotional absorption. Breathing exercises and labeling emotions in real time reinforce autonomy in social settings. The combination of reflection and forward planning enhances emotional resilience. Allocate moments at the end of the day to journal about emotional triggers, responses, and lessons learned. Then, plan strategies for similar situations tomorrow. This cyclical practice builds self-awareness, strengthens response flexibility, and cultivates internal authority. Medusa's archetype illustrates the power of anticipation and reflection combined. She is prepared, unwavering, and deliberate. Resilience is further strengthened through self-compassion. Busy women often criticize themselves harshly for perceived shortcomings. Emotional mastery requires shifting the inner dialogue to one of firmness paired with empathy. Encourage yourself as you would a friend navigating similar pressures. Recognize effort and progress rather than fixating on mistakes. Medusa's story reminds us that strength is inseparable from respect, especially self-respect. Finally, integrating these principles into daily life transforms not only reactions but identity. By practicing focused attention, anticipatory preparation, alignment with values, time and social boundaries, reflection, and self-compassion, women create a stable inner world impervious to external turbulence. Medusa's gaze symbolizes this internal fortitude, calm, authoritative, and unshakable. Emotional mastery is not an endpoint. It is a continuous cultivation, turning pressure into presence, chaos into clarity, and vulnerability into power. Emotional mastery culminates in integration. It is not simply about isolated practices, but the seamless incorporation of awareness, boundaries, reflection, and self-regulation into the rhythm of everyday life. For busy women, the challenge is not just handling emotions, but sustaining composure under relentless demands. Medusa's archetype offers guidance. She is simultaneously vigilant and still, fierce and measured. Her power lies not in escape or reaction, but in the consistent cultivation of presence. In the modern context, this presence manifests as deliberate, intentional responses to stress, pressure, and interpersonal dynamics. A cornerstone of integrated mastery is the daily assessment of emotional energy. Like any valuable resource, it must be accounted for, nurtured, and protected. Begin each day by identifying potential emotional drains, meetings, social interactions, or challenging tasks, and preemptively preparing strategies for self-regulation. Use brief mindfulness exercises, labeling emotions, or setting clear intentions for engagement. Medusa's example reminds us that anticipation, paired with deliberate response, neutralizes chaos before it gains momentum. Emotional energy, managed with clarity, becomes a tool rather than a liability. Resilience is reinforced through the conscious exercise of choice. Busy women often feel reactive because they are responding to demands imposed by others. True mastery emerges when every response is intentional. Ask before acting, is this aligned with my values, priorities, and goals? If yes, proceed. If no, establish a boundary or defer action. This principle echoes Stoic wisdom. External events cannot harm unless they penetrate the domain of internal choice. Medusa's myth is a model of this principle, her boundaries absolute, her gaze selective, her power derived from choice rather than force. Social pressures are inevitable, yet emotional mastery depends on perspective. Women often absorb expectations from family, colleagues, and society, confusing obligation with responsibility. Begin to differentiate between what is truly yours and what belongs to others. Journaling exercises help identify patterns of undue emotional investment. Reflect on questions like, which opinions affect me unnecessarily? Or, where am I sacrificing my calm for approval? Medusa embodies radical discernment. She does not allow external forces to dictate her emotional state. The role of solitude deepens at this stage. Beyond reflection, solitude provides calibration. Short daily retreats, whether a walk, a moment of silence, or mindful breathing, anchor the mind and reinforce boundaries. Neuroscience confirms that even brief, intentional pauses improve focus, reduce stress, and enhance decision-making. Medusa's isolation, historically misunderstood, symbolizes sovereignty. Embracing chosen solitude allows women to consolidate inner resources and emerge, ready to engage the world with clarity and confidence. Accountability is another pillar of integration. Emotional mastery is strengthened when you track progress and recognize growth. Maintain a journal to note instances of effective response, moments of pause, and exercises completed. Over time, patterns emerge, revealing increased resilience and deliberate control. Medusa's legend teaches that mastery is cumulative. Small, consistent acts compound into formidable presence. Each successful regulation of emotion reinforces neural pathways that make future mastery instinctive. Practical tools consolidate this integration. Combine labeling, reframing, and mindful breathing with priority setting and boundary reinforcement. For instance, before a challenging meeting, pause for a 2-minute reset. Identify dominant emotions. Visualize Medusa's gaze as a metaphor for your calm, and set intentions for boundaries. These small, repeatable rituals embed mastery into daily life, turning theory into embodied skill. self-compassion remains central. Even with integrated practice, moments of reactive emotion will occur. Respond with curiosity rather than judgment. Analyze triggers and identify strategies for next time. This approach prevents self-criticism from undermining progress and strengthens the neural circuitry for long-term resilience. Medusa embodies this balance, fierce yet measured, strong yet aware. Emotional mastery includes grace toward oneself as well as vigilance toward the world. Integration also involves harmonizing personal and professional spheres. Busy women often struggle to maintain composure across diverse roles. Apply consistent practices, pauses, boundaries, reflection, and intention across all domains. Emotional mastery does not belong solely to work or home. It is a holistic practice. Medusa's archetype demonstrates that presence is not situational, it is consistent, unwavering, and self-directed. Ultimately, emotional mastery transforms identity. You move from reactive survival to intentional living. Pressure becomes an instrument for clarity, criticism a mirror for growth, and solitude a source of empowerment. Medusa's gaze is no longer a myth but a lived metaphor, calm, deliberate, and sovereign. By integrating awareness, boundaries, reflection, breath, and self-compassion, you achieve a level of presence that commands respect not through intimidation, but through disciplined emotional authority. Emotional mastery is not a destination. It is the ongoing cultivation of your inner domain, the deliberate shaping of your response to a chaotic world. Emotional mastery is not a fleeting skill. It is the deliberate cultivation of presence, clarity, and sovereignty in every moment. Busy women are often pulled in countless directions, yet the true power lies in the ability to command your inner world. By practicing awareness, boundaries, reflection, and self-compassion, you transform the chaos of daily life into a structured, purposeful domain where your responses are deliberate, not reactive. Medusa's gaze becomes a guiding symbol, calm, discerning, and unshakable, reflecting the inner authority you cultivate through consistent practice. The journey of mastery is continuous. Each pause, each moment of breath, each boundary set reinforces your strength. Life will continue to test patience, resilience, and composure, but your power lies in the unwavering ability to respond with intention. Solitude, reflection, and deliberate choice are not indulgences, they are the foundations of emotional sovereignty. By embracing these practices, you redefine how pressure, criticism, and anxiety interact with your inner life. Be like Medusa. Stand firm, not by retreating from the world, but by commanding presence in it. Let your gaze, your pauses, and your choices reflect the disciplined mastery you have cultivated. Radical authenticity, emotional sovereignty, and inner clarity are your legacy, not to intimidate, but to inspire. In a world that constantly demands more, the ultimate act of rebellion and freedom is mastery over oneself.